On the program tonight, we have my friend Alex. Alex, are you there?
I'm here. Can you see me?
Hey, how you doing there?
Doing fine. How you doing, David?
I'm pretty good. You are a former atheist, correct?
That's correct.
Now, just so people get an idea of, start to like you first, because once you talk for a while, they're not going to like you anymore.
That's true.
I'm just kidding. I make fun of Alex. He's my verbal punching bag here. But Alex, why don't you tell us a cool story? Think of all you've got like 20 awesome stories that I've heard a bunch of times. How about the airport security story, just so people get an idea of who you are?
Yeah, when you look like me, you got to be careful when you go through the airport. You can't really make anybody fearful because of the look I have. A lot of people think I'm from the Middle East. Actually, my parents were born in the former Yugoslavia, which is now Serbia. And so I've been in America for 22 years now. And when I first came to America, went to college in a small town in Indiana. And I was going back to Paris and going through the Indianapolis airport. And lo and behold, I was going through the security check, and it started beeping. And so they started asking people who had a specific bag going through the check, and it was mine. And then they asked me, anything that you have in there that you shouldn't? And I was thinking and couldn't remember anything. And then the light came on, and remembered that I had bought a grenade at a Korean War museum. My dad loved history, so I had bought him a grenade that was not, of course, a grenade anymore. I mean, it was a used grenade with no bomb in it. So I had purchased it for him, and so I scared the whole Indianapolis airport with my grenade. And thank God it was before September 11th, but they still gave me a very hard time, David, and it was not fun. It was not fun.
Yeah, you'd have been in all kinds of trouble just a little later.
Yes.
So, Alex, you are the sort of person who will bring a grenade through a security check at an airport. Obviously, you're capable of making some huge mistakes, but you realize when you're wrong, and that's what happened with sort of your entire worldview. So why don't you give us a little background?
Sure.
Because you say you're an atheist. Now, some people that can mean different things, right? Because it can just mean you didn't really care much. It can mean you were obsessed with atheism. You're running around like Richard Dawkins. It can mean you just you don't take religion seriously very much. You just you don't really care. So what category sort of did you fall into?
Yeah, that's true. There's so many kinds of atheists. Well, I was born. My parents left Yugoslavia, as I mentioned. They grew up under a communist regime, and they left in the 60s. And I was born in '72 in Paris, France. So I grew up in France, which is, my understanding, one of the largest atheist population in the world. France. And so I grew up, and religion was not really very important. And my parents were, they would have said Christians. They were what I would consider at the time nominal Christians. My dad was Eastern Orthodox, my mother Roman Catholic. We went to church twice a year, what you call CEO Christians, Christmas and Easter only kind of Christians. And I grew up, but I was the only one who just had made a decision that believing in a God, in some kind of infinite being or somebody who is there watching you or protecting you was absurd in my idea. So I decided early on, especially after my father had his first heart attack and I was 12 years old, it hurt me so badly that I decided that no, there couldn't be possibly a God who would allow me to suffer because I was such a good guy. So I wasn't, I had not. Go ahead, David.
So you had actually dealt a little bit with what's called the problem of evil when you're young. That a God would not allow this sort of thing to happen, but this sort of thing is happening. Therefore God doesn't exist.
That's right.
And also, it's interesting that I've seen that from some atheists who are a bit older. Who, my grandma died, and that's when I renounced belief in God. And what's always interesting is, you were 12, so I understand that.
Right.
But some of these guys are 16, 18, 20, 22 years old, and their grandma dies or a parent dies or something like that, and then they, that's when I stopped believing in God. And it's just interesting because, I mean, not you, because you were 12, but this 18, 20, 22-year-old person, I mean, you knew that this thing was going on in the world. You knew that this thing was going on. You knew that people were dying. You knew that people's grandparents or parents were dying, and yet it only really mattered when it was someone close, when it was close, and then suddenly a light turns on that God doesn't allow this. When it was, it was a different story when it was happening to everyone else. But so you're 12 and you're already dealing with this. All right, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that, yeah, that was part of my atheism, and the other part was basically I found Christians and believers in general, because I grew up with a lot of Muslims. That's where I grew an interest in Islam after I became a believer, but that's a different story. But I just found my friends to be weak, and in the sense that they had to turn over their will and their power to a being that was, for me, non-existent, and I would test them on so many levels, and to me it appeared that their being was not there for them when they needed it, when they needed him or it, and so for me it was just a weakness and a crutch, and I felt like I was a hard-working person from the earliest stage. I believe in working very hard, and so I believe that you make your own destiny, and there's nobody out there to be there for you or protect you.
And so you already from a young age then you have two of the most common things that atheists say, that if God existed, He wouldn't allow these bad things to happen, and that people only believe in religion because it's a kind of crutch. It gives them some sort of comfort, and they need that comfort because they aren't willing to face life as it is and really take it head on, and so they lean on this delusion because it brings them comfort. Interesting, but go ahead.
Well, basically that's where I was coming from, David, and basically it was on the two different levels, and just to me it didn't make any sense, and like I said, I believe that you take your own life in your own power and control, and you make you make your own life the way you want it to be. The only problem with that ideology is that's true. You could make your own life and control your own life, and for the most part, especially when you're healthy, basically meet your own goals. The only problem is that there was an emptiness inside of me that kept growing, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners who are Christians and were unbelievers before went through the same thing. Basically, that you somehow the more you're successful, the more you achieve, the deeper of a hole you grow in your heart, and that was a big problem for me. I went through severe depression as I went through my teenage years, and being accepted and being rejected, and just suffering with my dad suffering and being unhealthy. B, with the educational system and the political system, the social system in Europe and France, and just not being able to find myself and being happy and at peace with myself. That was a big existential problem.
And you bring up an interesting point, which is much broader than just your story. That so many times we look up to the Michael Jacksons of the world, the Elvis Presleys of the world, and how great it would be when you find out they're miserable, right? You find out, wait, you've gotten to the point where you've got everything you could possibly want. You have worldwide fame. You have endless money. You have huge mansions. You have anything you want, and you're just miserable. And it's like people fight all their lives to sort of get to this peak, and most people don't. But they've got some purpose as long as they're fighting for it. But the higher up you get, you realize that is this all there is? Is this it? What was the point of all this? And it's just a story we hear over and over again about all the people who spend their entire lives trying to reach something, and once they do, are just totally miserable. So you were recognizing this. You were recognizing this earlier on. So this is interesting because this is a difference between you and our friend Guillaume, who was a former French atheist. And maybe I've got a video of his testimony. Maybe we'll play it later on this program. But Guillaume seemed like he was perfectly happy. He was perfectly happy
right.
playing in a rock band and professional athlete, and he seemed like he wasn't searching for anything deeper. But you were recognizing that there's a problem in
right.
in life. All right, so something happened at some point, but what happened?
Well, first of all, I was going to say, when you're good looking like Guillaume, life is a little easier,
Yeah,
but
when you're like us, you really got to deal with the.
When you look like me or like you, it's life is a little tougher. So, but anyway, Guillaume is a good friend and he's a great guy. But no, basically, David, what I was going to say is, when you're talking about famous people, it's Boris Becker who said that after he won his dream was to win a Grand Slam. I don't know if you know Boris Becker, a tennis player, but his dream was to win a Grand Slam. He said, if I could just win one Grand Slam. At 17 years of age, he won Wimbledon, and then he was sat in his room, contemplating suicide after he had just won the first Grand Slam and achieved his dreams, because he had realized that once you get to the top, there's not a better view from there. And so just to go along with what you were saying. So then I just grew up in France, David, and I was just very miserable. I failed high school miserably at the age of 20. Normally people finish high school at 18. At 20, I just, I still couldn't finish high school.
Now, why is that? You don't have intellectual problems. You're a smart guy. So what's going on?
Again, I don't want to get into politics, but basically, there was a lack of motivation when I grew up in Paris, and my teachers didn't have the same worldview as I did politically. So there was a lot of struggles with my educational ambitions, and I just was not very motivated, not very happy with the system in place. And so that's a different story. But it was, basically this idea of existentialism that was very much in place in Europe, and then also the educational system was not for me, David. It just didn't work out for me. A lot of my teachers had favorites, and they would pick their favorites, and it didn't really matter if you studied or not. If you're not one of their favorites, you just failed. So anyway, so I went through that, and so at one point at the age of 20, I decided, what am I going to do? I mean, I'm really miserable. I'm suicidal at that point, and so I started talking to people about wanting to go to leave France and go somewhere else. And my dad's assistant at work overheard me say that, and she came to me and she said, "So Alex, you want to go to leave France, go to America or somewhere else? How are you going to get there?" I said, "I really don't know. I don't know anybody there, but I needed to leave." She said, "Alex, there's a lady, an American missionary at our Protestant church in Paris, and she organizes trips for French kids to go to the U.S." I said, "Well," she said, "then she's leaving next Tuesday to go to Kentucky. You might want to come on Sunday to our church and talk to her." I said, "I'll be there. I'll be there Sunday." So Sunday comes around, and I met with the lady. I'm not going to use her name. I don't think she would mind. But anyway, spoke to her and begged her to help me out, to find me a family in the U.S. And she told me three things. A, that I was too old. They were organizing trips for 15, 16-year-olds. I was 20 years old, so I was a little too old for it. Secondly, that that they had sent one kid to a family in the U.S. and the kid had stolen money from family. And thirdly, they had sent another kid, and the kid had done some kind of drugs or something. So it reflected badly on the church, so they decided not to do it anymore. So I got on my knees as an atheist and begged her, because of course it was for my own benefit. I didn't believe in God, but it was for my own benefit, so I begged her to help me out, and she did. She felt moved by the Holy Spirit. She told me later, and to help me out, which was quite amazing. And so she found a family for me, and in October 1992, at 20 years of age, I came to America.
And, well, you didn't become a Christian because of that, right?
No, I didn't. I was an atheist for another, let's see, for another 11 years.
Oh, wow. So you were old.
For another 11 years, I went through schooling.
You were not in that narrow range that I mentioned earlier, where people who have these radical shifts in worldview. It's usually when they're late high school or early college years, because before that, when you're 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, you kind of just believe in whatever your parents tell you. You trust them completely, and then when you're an adult, you get more and more set in your ways to where you're not going to change, no matter, I can't believe that I've been living my entire life and I was wrong all that time, and so you have a sort of block towards changing. So you're like 31 years old when you make this change?
Right, and so when I came to America, I was 20, so went to college for 4 years. After 4 years of college, I mean, it's a long story, but after 4 years of college, found a job and started working for a big company. I'm not going to use the name. And for 11 years, worked for that company. And
here in the United States.
Here in the United States, yes. And then 10 years into my job, I was doing pretty well for 10 years, and I was married. And then a few things happened. My first wife, left me, so that really shook my boat, because again, I thought I was in control of my life. I was successful. I was married. I was going to decide what was going to happen in my life, and I was going to plan everything. That didn't need a God. But then my whole world fell apart. Like I said, my wife left me. B, my work was a little difficult. I just didn't find any desires to work. Somehow my whole motivation was not there. I would go to sleep hoping not to wake up the next morning, and so I went through really even more severe depression about let's see, that's about 13 years ago. 12 years ago, I went through, in 2003, went through severe depression. And so at the peak of the depression in April of 2003, I decided, this is it. Life doesn't make sense. I'm the only good guy in the world. I really believed I was the morally one of the best human beings that had ever lived on the face of the earth.
Lots of people do, Alex.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. No, but David, I know, and what I tell people is the further away you are from Christ, the more you will see yourself as being a good person. And this idea of a savior that makes no sense to somebody who thinks they're good. Why would somebody die for me? I'm a good person. And so Hitler was probably seeing himself as a good person. And as a matter of fact, using Hitler, if somebody had told me, but Alex, you're a sinner. Some of my Christian friends used to bring that to me and say, you're not perfect. I said, I'm not, but I'm much better than Hitler. What a great person model to compare yourself to. But anyway.
Yeah. Now, if you're, but as you pointed out, if you're Hitler, hey, all these weak-minded people, they go about, not letting society reach its full potential. And Hitler's going out and he's cleaning out the places where you have disabled children staying and stuff like that. Hey, let's get them out of the gene pool. He's taken it. He had portable gas chambers and so on, but he's the one who's really taken this through to its logical conclusion. If it's survival of the fittest and we can advance, well, there are people who are holding us back, Jews among them, and we need to man up. We need to man up, be strong people, wipe them all out, and then we can reach our potential. So he views himself as like I mean, you know, not quite the Messiah, but he's in that ballpark.
Yeah.
So anyway, the point here is you can always compare yourself in some way to someone else to make yourself look
That's right.
really, really great. And so that's what we all do. That's what we all do. We're all great and wonderful. So yeah, who needs a savior?
That's right. There's nothing easier than to rationalize your sins. I remember when Madoff was arrested and went to jail, a journalist went to see him, Bernie Madoff, and they asked him. They said, "Do you have regrets? Do you feel the need to repent?" And he said, "No, no. I went back and looked at how much money I made those people and how much money I got them back, and they should be thanking me." So he absolutely was rationalizing, could not even see that he had sinned. Incredible what the human mind and human nature can do to people. But that's what happened, is that I thought of myself as a good, really good person, and the whole world was evil, and I was the victim, and they were the guilty party. And
so that's actually that's an interesting problem, because if you feel like you're a dirtbag, if hey, I'm really a dirtbag, I deserve whatever happens to me because of how horrible I am, you can be miserable and depressed. But if you think, hey, I'm really great and I deserve much more, and all this bad stuff is happening to me, then wow, I guess that can be some rough stuff there.
It is rough. It is really difficult because you're delusional. You're thinking, that's you don't need your savior, obviously, because you're a good person, and then you're delusional in the sense that that you feel as a victim. And of course, we know a lot of ideologies out there that come across as victims, but that's how I felt. I felt like I was a guy in the battle, and the rest of the world was evil and was against me, and therefore life had lost all of its meaning. It didn't have a lot of meaning before, but at least I felt like I could make a meaning out of it without God. But at that point, life had no meaning whatsoever. What was the point? I tried, I fought hard, I was a good guy, and I lost in that battle. And the world, I lost, had won against me. And so I was going to take my life away in April of 2003. And that was the solution to my problem.
Alex, we have to take a quick break, so that's a good stopping point. You are deciding you're going to kill yourself. That's a good cliffhanger for the break here. So Alex is obviously still here, so he didn't go through with his plan. What happened? We'll be back to discuss that here in just a moment on the Trinity Channel.
So I had decided, as I told you from before the commercial, that I had decided, to put an end to all the suffering, which was unfair to a good moral human being like myself. And so I went home and decided that was it. And as I sat there and was contemplating how I was going to take my life away and end it all, I decided that I couldn't do it. Not because I was a wimp or a coward, because that would have been the easiest thing to do, but because I didn't want my family to suffer. I have a wonderful family who loves me dearly. We're very tight, and I couldn't do that to them. So now I sat there and started reflecting and deciding what are my options. I'm somebody who likes to find solutions to every single problem. So I decided, I started thinking, okay, I don't want to live, but at the same time, I can't take my life away because I don't want my family to suffer. What are my options? And I couldn't think of any, David. I felt like I was in a dead end, and I couldn't find a solution. At that point, I cried out. I cried out so hard out of my soul, and out of anguish, and because of all the incredible suffering and hurt I had within myself. And at that moment, I had what they call a near-death experience, or what you want to call even more precisely, an out-of-body experience. My soul left my body, and I saw myself, and I felt like I was in the hand of Jesus. And he, at a moment, showed me my whole life, and it was a beautiful, like a Hollywood movie, even better than a Hollywood movie. I felt like my whole life, I saw my whole life ahead in front of me, and how God had protected me and walked with me through all the difficult times of my life.
Hold on. Near-death experiences and out-of-body experiences are normally related to that. They're called near-death experiences because you normally near death, your heart is stopped.
Right.
Some people, even their brain functions have shut down, and then they are brought out of it, so they don't actually die. They're on the verge of death. They might even be dead in a sense, but then they're revived, clear, like that, and then they come back and they say they had conscious experiences of what was going on, but you weren't going through any of that, right? You weren't. Your heart didn't stop. Nothing like that.
No, David, but it was definitely an out-of-body experience. The reason I use near-death experience in my case is because right before I had that experience, I had decided unconsciously, completely, to turn over my soul to the devil. And the reason was because I didn't have any options. I didn't want to kill myself. At the same time, I didn't want to live. I decided unconsciously to not care anymore.
What do you mean the devil? You're an atheist.
I know. But looking back after my experience, I realized what had happened. And what had happened is that at that moment, I was, unconsciously, I decided that was it. I was not going to be the good guy anymore. That I was going to, since I was the good guy and the whole world was against me and was evil and was out there to get me, I was going to be one of them. I was going to go on the other side.
That's the beginning of the plot of the movie Megamind. I don't know if you've seen it, but that's how he is. Hey, I've decided if I'm gonna be treated like the bad guy, I'm gonna be the baddest guy I can. So now, as far as this out of body experience, so like what are you? What is your body doing when this happens?
I'm not in my body, so I don't know what my body is doing.
No. I mean, okay, before you have the out of body experience, what are you doing?
I'm just struggling and trying to find a solution. And
no. I mean, are you like sitting at a dining room table?
I'm sitting. Yeah, I'm sitting.
Okay, so you're just sitting there, and then this happens.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now go ahead.
Well, so I'm outside my body, and I see my whole life and how God walked with me. Now, I didn't see Jesus. Now, if you want me to talk, I don't know if we have time, if you want me to talk about my dad's near-death experience, which was 7 years before mine, and I didn't believe it. But my dad had the near-death experience. He saw Jesus. I didn't see Jesus. I felt Jesus. I felt like I was in the palm of his hand.
Well, hang on. Now you've intrigued everyone. So your dad had a near-death experience when he was actually near death.
Absolutely. He was on his deathbed, maybe 6-7 weeks before he died, and he had a heart surgery in France. Do you want me to get into it, David?
Yeah, because you've mentioned that your family was sort of nominal Christian.
Yes.
And so your father, what's the problem? Why?
So the problem is, I told you, one part of my suffering when I was a teenager was that my dad had heart problems. He had his first heart attack when I was around 12 years old. I don't exactly remember the age. I might have been 13. It doesn't really matter. But from then on, I was just really hurt, and I felt like my dad could die. And every time I would sleep, and I could hear him on next door coughing. I was like, oh man, he's coughing. He may have a heart attack and die tonight. And it was just very hard for me because I love my parents. And of course, if there's no God and you lose your parents, you lost everything. You got nothing. You're never going to see them again. So my dad, at one point when I was 20, let's see, I was 24. He had such a bad heart. We tried to convince him to go see doctors and have a surgery. He didn't want to. He was a tough guy from Montenegro. If people who know me, they know that I'm a softie. But my dad was, a tough man. He was a good man and a really loving man, but tough on the outside. He was from Montenegro, which is, I believe, the second tallest people in the world, and you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at me. But he was tough, and so we tried to convince him to go have open heart surgery, and he said no. Finally, we convinced him. He went and had an infection, and 11 people died. He was the last one to die. They all died within weeks, and he died many weeks later after everyone died. But one day he was there, and he had to have, because of the infection, he had to have dialysis. So in other words, every day they would have to clean and change his blood, which would make him very, very weak and very dry. He needed compresses, to keep him moist. And one day my mother went to visit him, and before she got to his room, she asked the nurses, she asked them, how is he doing? And they said, it's a miracle. He is amazing. He's moist. He doesn't need the compresses anymore. He looks amazing. He looks like a new man. So she goes in the room and she says, wow, Ivan, that was his name, Ivan, you look amazing. She said, and he said, close the door, come here, sit down. And so she did, and he started sharing with her what had happened to him. And he said, yesterday I met Jesus. And my wife said, you met Jesus? How did you meet Jesus? So he said, well, I was walking across a body of water, and I was going on the other side of the water, and Jesus met me halfway. And he said, where are you going? And I told him I was going on the other side. He said, no, your time is not ready. Go back. I'll be back to come and get you. And so he did come back to his body and was completely born again. I mean, the expression born again was perfectly an example of his experience and my experience, which were different. But he was completely born again. And after that, he didn't care about eating. He didn't care about drinking. All he cared about is sharing Jesus with people. So he had experienced a near-death experience where he had met Jesus.
Now, what? Because this is several years before you had any kind of change. So what did you think of this at the time?
Oh, I thought it was absurd,
Okay.
And I expect people who are listening tonight who are not believers to feel the same way. That's why I have no problem with atheists. I have no problem with atheists calling me names or thinking I'm an imbecile. Because
no, I mean, I call you names all the time, and you're fine with
yes.
it. So I don't know why you'd worry about it if an atheist is
That's
saying
true. That's true. If I can take it from you, I can take it from anyone. Men from West Virginia. So, and with your kind of testimony. So, but I really don't mind with people thinking that that I'm a fool or that all that, because that's how I felt about my dad. I told my mom, it was just, maybe the drugs, he had too many drugs, maybe he was, delusional, and, not knowing that 7 years later, I would have my own, out-of-body experience. And so it was really powerful. But yeah, I didn't believe my dad, and, and thank God I didn't call him. I was in the US, I was in America, and my dad was in France. Thank God I never insulted him after the experience on the phone. Thank God I didn't do that. I respected him, even though I kept telling my mom and all my friends that it was the most ridiculous thing ever.
Mm-hmm. So this brings us back to your experience. Mm-hmm. You have, I can't call it near death, so some kind of out of body
Sure.
experience. And what happened? You became a Christian?
So okay. So let me just mention, when I mention near-death experience from my own experience, what I mean to say, and I know it's again, theologically speaking, a lot of people would have more questions about it, but what I call, in my case, a near spiritual death experience, because I was going to turn my soul over to the devil. And so what I call for myself, for my dad, is a near-death experience. For me, a near spiritual death experience. So, but anyway, out-of-body experience, I come back to my body, and I'm born again. I'm absolutely 100% a new man, new heart. My heart was completely transformed. I was at peace for the first time in my life. I was full of love. I felt like my heart was going to explode. I had to unbutton my shirt. I felt like so much love, and I started crying and crying. And then what happened is that I wanted to share with people what had happened to me. So the first person I could think of was my Palestinian friend, a Muslim friend of mine. So I called him. I said, could I come and see you? I said, absolutely. So I went to see him and started sharing with him what had happened. And he said, Alex, I tell you what, everything that happened to you, you will find in the Quran, if you would just read the Quran. And I said, really? Wow, very interesting. I will do that.
That's very interesting to me too, because I don't know what he's talking about as far as the Quran.
Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
So I went back. Of course, people. Sometimes you'll hear Christians say, "Well, surely somebody had to preach the gospel to you, and you had the Bible." Yeah, I did. And a lot of people on my work. There was a man, a very dear friend of mine. And I'm not going to use his name for but I don't think he would mind. But he prayed for me for 2 years every night, David. Every single night. He felt God put a burden on his heart to pray for me every single night. He shared the gospel with me. I made a fool of him. I just mocked him every time he tried to preach to me. I mocked his God, but he kept loving me and praying for me. So I do believe that some people preach the gospel to me and they planted seeds and prayed for me and they made a difference. So, but anyway, so I went back and read the Quran. I started reading the Quran, and then only to find out what's actually written in the Quran, which you never hear of, and that even a lot of moderate and liberal Muslims don't even know are in the Quran. And when you tell them, they look at you like, "What Quran are you reading?" So I went back to my Muslim friend in question, and then to my Muslim friends in France, because I grew up with a lot of Muslims, and started telling them, "You know what's in the Quran? Do you know it says this? Do you know Muhammad did that?" And all these things. And my friends were looking at me like, "You're nuts. You must be reading a wrong Quran. Let me give you the right Quran." So I have 7 Qurans from 7 different people who have given me their version of the Quran, and it says the same thing. So I started studying the Quran, and obviously, to me, it was not from God. That's the conclusion I came from and then I started reading the Bible. I met a man at Barnes and Noble, and I heard him preaching on the phone loudly, and I thought it was so rude, speaking loud about religious things when there are people around him. Anyway, he did, and I started talking to him, and then we started hanging out, and he gave me some books to read. I read one of the most powerful books that I read at the time was The Case for Christ from Lee Strobel, and I read the book, and then it took me a year and a half, David, to even though I had Christ in me, I needed to understand in here what was going on. And so it took me a year and a half, and after a year and a half, by the way, a month after I came, I had that experience, I met my wife, my current wife, and she had been born, was born, grew up in the Episcopal Church, and then went through some changes in her life. She was a student at the university, and I was more into Taoism and Buddhism and those things. So for a year and a half, we started studying, and I started sharing with her what I was finding out. And a year and a half later, we both at the same time officially gave our life to Christ.
So
after looking at the evidence, David.
So you have an experience, and then it's later that you actually
That's true. Yeah.
go through the gospel and accept the gospel.
Mm-hmm. Even though the first story I read in the Bible, I just opened my Bible, and the first story I remember reading was the woman at the well. And as I'm reading that story, I'm crying and crying. Why? Because it reminded me of my father. It reminded me of my father, who had this near-death experience and came back from after his near-death experience and was not thirsty anymore. He had received the spiritual water that Jesus gives. So here's the first story I read in the Bible, and I'm crying because it's alive. They're not words anymore. They're power, the power of God coming to life. And that's what the Holy Spirit does when you're born again. It brings the Bible, the New Testament, to life. That's what it does.
Now, Alex, so you make a change. You say you're 31 at this time?
33.
33 years old.
31 when I had my experience, 33, around 33, 32, 33 when I gave my life to Christ. Let's see, 33 when I gave my life to Christ.
So that's pretty late in the game. But now
yes.
you haven't changed your mind, or
No, I haven't changed my mind. That's not going to happen. If I ever change my mind, it would be deliberately denying what I know to be true. So, but it's no, there's no changing on my mind. No. And when you meet, it would be like somebody trying to convince me 20 years from now that I'd never spoken to you on Skype, or that I'd never met you in person. Sure, I can deny it, but it still happened, and it happened. So you can't deny it.
Now, Alex, you sort of began by you drew attention to the problem of evil, but then you pointed out that you regarded Christians as, I guess any religious people, as sort of weak-minded. in need of a crutch. Now, you obviously had, had some emotional concerns. You're miserable, and you're having a lot of problems, and then you become a Christian. So how is this not just you needing a crutch in order to deal with life, and now you're okay because you've got a crutch to lean on?
Well, to answer your question, two ways. Number one, I did need a crutch. At that point, I needed a savior because I could not save myself. I got to a point where all my life I felt like I could find a solution to every single one of my problems, and to a certain degree, I did. In the physical world, obviously, I was empty in my heart. But at that point, I got to a dead end where I felt like there was no solution. I could not come up with a solution, and so I did at that point need it, and that's why at the bottom, when I surrender and I felt like there was no other solution, that's where I just turned out to not to God because I didn't believe in God, but to a solution outside of myself. And so I did need a crutch at that point, but that again is what I went through. But again, once you start relying on God and on His Scripture, on His Word, and of course on the Holy Spirit, then you know that He's in control. He knows that He's real. First of all, it's not an ideology. Other religions are, in my opinion, and tell me if I'm wrong, but of course, we know that to be true, that they are just ideologies. They're just, in the mind, where Christianity is an experience, is a relationship with the living God. So again, once you have that relationship with the living God, you know that He has your back, and that nothing can happen that's outside of His will when you trust Him. So it isn't a crutch now anymore. It's knowing that that I by surrendering to Him, is in full control of my life.
So, Alex, you've been talking about your personal experience here, and that you did need you were in need of a kind of crutch, and you've had some experiences, but non-Christians who are watching right now, they haven't had those experiences, and they don't particularly know that they can trust you, right? I mean, there's some people telling some wild stories in the world, and even if they believe everything you've said, maybe they'll explain it by psychological factors or something like that. Not any real relationship with God. It's something in your mind. So for people who don't share your experience, what would you say to them?
That's an excellent question. I'm so glad you asked that, David, because I would have hated to end it just there, because I don't want people to believe in my experience. I want people to search, and you and I are into debates and apologetics. After I had that experience, I fell in love with apologetics, because the thing that really besides my experience, which was real and that was never going to change any of what I believe because it had happened to me, I still needed in my mind some evidence. I needed something to transform my mind, and what that was, it was the evidence of Christianity. Christianity is not just a belief system. It's not just an experience. Oh, great, I had an experience. A lot of people have experiences in other religions that they claim to, but Christianity is above other religions in the sense that it's based on evidence. If you want evidence for your belief, you will find it. If you're really seeking with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul and all your strength, you will find Jesus, even if you don't have the kind of experience that I do. Because if you're genuine in your heart, and you really, Jesus said, if you're my disciples, then you will know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. In other words, seeking the truth is not just an experience. It can be an intellectual endeavor, and that's what I encourage people, whether they're agnostic, Muslims, or atheists. It doesn't really matter. Buddhists, anything, to look at the evidence, look at the claims of Jesus. Did he exist historically? We know he did. Was he crucified? We know he did. History tells us that. What are the evidence of his miracles? What are the evidence of his claims and the prophecies of the Old Testament? If you look at the whole of the evidence, you cannot you cannot not come to the feet of Jesus and give your life to him.
So you're saying that if people have examined the life of Jesus, they're going to become Christians?
Absolutely, if they're genuine in heart. But of course, the Spirit has to be working there, and of course, prayers makes a huge difference. But absolutely, if somebody's genuine in their heart and they're seeking truth, and that's all that matters. It's truth. Truth is, somebody yesterday asked me at, I went to a party, and somebody said, "What is truth?" And so I asked
Hey,
them.
well, I've heard that before. So.
That's right. From Pontius Pilate,
yeah.
And saying to Jesus, "What is truth?" But then he turns around and doesn't want to hear the truth. And it's interesting that a lot of people we talk to, and I'm not trying to bash anyone, but a lot of people I talk to, once I start talking about some of the things, talking about truth statement, a lot of people don't want to hear. They just don't want to hear the truth. But if you seek the truth, if you're really genuine and you're willing to change your mind, if you have a teachable spirit and you want to know the truth, you will open yourself to some incredible life-changing evidence, and by seeking, and by finding and by looking into the evidence of Christianity and Christ. So.
And it's we're kind of in a different world than past generations. In past generations, you had sort of the Christendom. You had the Christian world, and so that was the only worldview that you'd really be familiar with. It's everyone you knew was a Christian, whereas now we're familiar with so much. We look around at the world, and Christianity is just one. It's one worldview among so many others. Who you believe that yours is true, but so does the Muslim, so does the Buddhist, so does the Hindu, and some of them are even open to other systems being true along with theirs. And then the atheists are saying they're right, and everyone's saying that they're right. So Alex, we know that you've had your experience, but Muslims have had their experience. Why should anyone think that Christianity is somehow the exclusive truth, that Christianity has the monopoly here?
Right. Well, first of all, Muslims supposedly believe in Jesus, right? They say that Jesus, he was a great prophet. Well, what do we go by? What do we have of Jesus? If you're Muslim, what are you going to go by? Are you going to go by what Jesus said in the Bible? Or are you going to believe that that's been corrupted? If it's been corrupted, then what are you going to go by? You have nothing of Jesus except some of the sayings maybe in the Quran. But if you go by what the disciples wrote of Jesus, Jesus said, "I am the truth. I am," with a capital T. So he's putting himself above and beyond everything and everyone that's ever existed. So you have to look at those claims. And I would invite my Muslim friends, if some of them are watching on your show, to look at those claims and to see, of what we have. And if you go by the Quran, something that was written 6 centuries later by one person, really, one person who claims to have revelations directly, from God by the angel Gabriel, through the angel Gabriel. Why should we go by what one person says 6 centuries later in a different language, when we have the sayings of a multitude of people and that have been transformed and continue to be transformed, but who wrote the New Testament? The Quran says that no one can change the words of God. So if that's true, then what we have, the Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament, cannot be changed, because if those words can be changed or can be corrupted, then David, you know very well that then why should we trust the Quran not to be corrupted? And we have good evidence that it has been corrupted. So again, I would encourage my Muslim friends and atheists and agnostics just to look at the evidence. And a lot of people have looked at the evidence, such as Simon Greenleaf, who wrote some of the law system we have, and he was, some of his, he was challenged by one of his students to look at the evidence, and by using his own way of coming to the evidence as a lawyer and a professor at Harvard, and he looked at the evidence and said that without a doubt, Jesus was who he claimed to be by looking at the evidence.
So it sounded like what you're getting now. You focused mostly on Islam there, but it's important to keep in mind that there are a limited number of alternatives here, and we've dealt with sort of the main alternatives to Christianity today. You have Islam, that's the second largest religion in the world, and here in the West, for most people, the alternatives are theism or atheism.
Right.
On an earlier show this evening, Paul and I discussed sort of the unlivable incoherence of atheism and the moral problem that it leaves you with, that you have no ground for affirming that anything is really right or wrong. If you don't think we did, go back and watch the program. And so you have to affirm that there is no real objective right or wrong, but that's just unlivable. You cannot live that way. You can say it, but you cannot live that out. So that just turns out to be incoherent. And as you pointed out, Islam ends up being incoherent because Islam affirms the authority of Jesus and confirms the scriptures of the Christians, but the Jesus of the Bible that the Quran affirms claims to be the way, the truth, and the life, which is far more than he is in Islam. And so it seems that asking why is Christianity different, why should people think that it's the truth? Well, it comes down to Jesus. Jesus is different, right? He's making claims that no one else can make without being regarded as insane, and yet he's clearly not insane. And he has power, he has spiritual power to back it up, and he ultimately rises from the dead, confirming his message. And so Christianity outstrips everything else in every way. And so those of you who are seeking, if you're really thinking, oh, but there are so many alternatives, well, if you got Christianity saying, look, here's how you can know it's true, there are only a few worldviews that say this is how you can know that this is true. So you might want to start with the ones that claim, here's how you can know that they're true.